G'day everyone and welcome to Seven Questions, a podcast that shares the stories and compelling lessons founders, investors and leaders shaping our economy. I'm your host, Gerard, founder and investor at Partner and co-founder of Create Financial. Through Seven Questions, we explore the founder journey, idea to legacy, uncovering the insights, lessons and defining moments that shaped each founder and the amazing business they built. Whether you're a first-time founder, serial entrepreneur, investor, or someone looking for insights on entrepreneurship and what it takes to build a world-class company, these conversations are designed to inspire you, get you thinking, and hopefully you'll find some timely wisdom that propels your journey. G'day everyone, welcome to this episode of Seven Questions. I have been looking forward to getting this guy in the hot seat for quite some time. I've known Steve for well over a decade, and he truly has been both an inspiration and a leader in the innovation ecosystem here in Australia. And what he's doing right now with Beaten Zone, I think is putting Australia on the map globally from a defence and national security perspective. So I'm super excited to have you on the pod, Steve. Thanks for being here.
No, thanks, Wayne. All good.
Mate, before we start with Seven Questions, let's help people get to know you. So what are some of the moments and experiences that shape both your founder, because you've been an incredibly successful founder, and also your investor journey?
Well, on the founder side, I suppose I've founded three companies or co-founded three companies, two in the telecom space and then, or four if you count River City Labs, but River City Labs being a not-for-profit, it's not really a business, it's a charity, and then Beaten Zone. Those moments in that space, when you, I suppose, have the realization that there's something to what you're doing, or something to what you want to do. In my first business, I was attending a computer user group meeting in Adelaide, this weird operating system at the time called Linux. And I saw someone using a web browser for the first time. And I just knew the world, this is probably September, October. I just knew the world was going to change. I had to be part of that. So it was a moment of clarity for me, like none before. And then it was just all about execution after that. To be honest, not to sound flippant, because execution is pretty hard, but on the investor journey, so Beaten Zone, my latest effort, I suppose, where we were an early stage sovereign defence tech investor. It had been sitting with me for a while. This was no one real moment. I can tell the really funny story about how I launched it accidentally, because I was sitting actually in Wichita doing flight training for an aircraft I'd bought. This is a pretty first world story, Wayne. And it's like late 94, or what? Late 94, like 2022, 23. I'm pretty sure it was 22. Yeah, late 22. Literally, I was preparing a website stuff, and it was, put away in some WordPress site somewhere, and then the LinkedIn page, I actually published a LinkedIn page. I didn't know, all these people fucking sent me these messages saying, oh, wow, it's starting to see things. Like, oh, yeah, it looks like I have. So that was pretty funny.
Yeah, it's funny how things like that literally create the momentum that gives you the reassurance, the impetus, the confidence, whatever word you want to use to get going on something you already knew was the right thing to do. So, what was the inspiration behind Beaten Zone? What was the reason for founding Beaten Zone as a fund? What's the gap or opportunity that you see in the market?
I'll start with the gap. So the gap is the fact that in Australia, there's a lack of investment capital that will invest in people who make their things that sold to sales and hopefully will never have to use. So Beaten Zone, we invest in sovereign Australian businesses who increase capability around lethality and survivability. Lethality is the property of being lethal. So to us, lethality and survivability, same coin, different sides, turn them over. Either we provide tools to allow our service people to prosecute their tasks easier, or we protect our service people from the bad guy. So is what we do there. So, and the gap there was the fact that no one backs this stuff, to be honest. We have such an unhealthy approach to businesses that defend the realm. It's embarrassing, to be honest. So you can roughly sum it up as ESG, although it's a little more complicated than that, but ESG is a large criminal player in this conspiracy. So I love ESG. I think it's a societal pox, to be honest. It needs to be rid from the world. So as a result, there was a lack of investment capital, and so there was an opportunity. But the problems they're solving is the fact that, we were drunk on the hangover from the end of the Cold War, essentially. So everyone apart from a peace dividend, defence spending had fallen quite dramatically, as is other, areas around sovereign readiness. We're seeing the issues now. This is in late mid-April 2026. So we're seeing those issues in and around fuel, liquid fuel supply, urea, transport, plastics, and everything at the moment. Well, because we knew with what we'd done, and now we're surprised when we get cut off that we're cut off. I mean, it's like you actually planned for this, you idiots. Excuse me. I mean, there was a ton of really good people telling you about it. So as a result of the reduced defence budgets, literally torrents on the march, I get a bit flippant about it, and I sort of sum it up by saying every 70 or 80 years we go collectively mad and start murdering each other again. And I fear we're heading towards that really shocking part of history where the just great powers will collide, and it's good for our kids and grandkids. So now that's above my pay grade to stop, but there's an opportunity there at the same time to be able to create capability, to be able to create some investment activity, to get the right tools in the hands of allied warfighters. And that's a long answer, mate. There's a lot to it.
Mate, there is a lot to it. And you and I are both ex-defence, and I think, most people that go through defence have a fair amount of national pride and take upon themselves a responsibility to do something. And it's clear that with Beaten Zone, you've put your money where your mouth is, and you're trying to equip the warfighter with offensive and defensive capability to solve a critical gap in the market. And you talked about defence funding as being completely out of touch with what's required to equip a modern defence force, especially across 5 domains: air, land, sea, cyber, and space, right? It requires a big investment, and tech's moving so quickly, as we can see. What's some of the unique insights or, aspects of your thesis that creates an investment advantage for you and for the people that invest in your fund?
Well, we're first mover. I was going to say unique insight. So I get asked, so I've been involved with the defence sector in the civilian sense. I joined in 87, got out in 95. Got re-involved again in 2016 through the sort of innovation programs, for want of a better term. And I just saw an amazing amount of great people, great companies with great capability that were then falling into this valley of death. And I'm not too sure if your listeners are familiar with what the valley of death is, but it's after you've created a product, then when you try and sell it to someone to make a profit, you fall into this valley of death, which is this, you need to fill that valley with working capital somehow if you're not getting into sales. Most companies don't get out of the valley of death. And in defence, I rename it. It's not a valley of death. It's a chasm of death. And very few things get out of a chasm. So what we do is, and so we saw this great opportunity out there that we could seize on this minimum viable capability, or what, if you're familiar with the military power, it's mid technical readiness level, so mid TRL, between 0 to 9, 1 to 9 in defence. And 9 is something a soldier uses sort of 7 out of 7 days, and 1 is an idea aside to its head. So we sort of go for mid TRL technologies that have gone through a government program or government funded program of some description. So they've had a little bit of diligence over its technical ability. And that at the end of the day, that there's a warfighter who would be glad to take this into combat. To us, that's tick. That's DE. It must work. Someone's willing to risk their life with it. That's awesome. And then we take it to a larger market. So we go and invest in companies that have a material reliance on the Australian Defence Force. We're a small country with a small budget. I'll keep it polite today, way. And we spend 38 to 40 billion US dollars a year on defence. The US spending $1 trillion in the latest budget request from the Trump administration is for $1.5 trillion. So a much, much larger place for you to play. So let's get into the bigger market. Because we're the only operator in this market, the buy side equation tends to be better. And it's a simple rule. If 3 people turn up to buy a house, the house is going to be more expensive if 1 person turns up to buy the house. We're the 1 person turned up to buy the house. So, and then our task is to get that business into the US, into that larger market, into larger revenue streams, into programs. So not only do we get the revenue uplift, but we also get the multiple uplift. So if we're buying companies on whatever metric, take a metric, between 5 and 10x in Australia, and the US between 25 to 50x on the valuation front. So it's quite impressive, to be honest. There's a big arbitrage there to play with.
So many questions to ask you, Steve. I'm thinking about how you select companies. I'm thinking about the benefit of the arbitrage to Australian investors who want to participate and genuinely get a good return on investment while, in essence, investing in an impact. I'd call this for impact, right? Because you are genuinely creating I think sovereign capability and impacting
profit.
our way of life.
I need to be
of course.
care about returning multiples of invested capital back to our invested. Nothing matters that there is no social license to this business.
Yeah, okay.
If my people speak like that, then they'll get a speaking to at the very least. Now, if we get our return of capital back to our investors, I firmly believe that will downstream will contribute to very positive effects in the Australian defence industrial base.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think one drives the other. I'm focused on the main element.
Yeah, you're focused on the investment return, and that makes clear sense being an investor, right? So how does that shape the way you pick and support companies?
So we're also configured under ESVCLP, which, to investment wonks means a lot, but to those it doesn't. So it's a federal government program, quite a good one, been around since 2007, I want to say, that gives investors a 10% tax credit the way in and capital gains tax free on the way out. Get your own tax advice.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm not a tax accountant. So that dictates a lot of what we invest in. So we have to invest. It's a very good program, but it has rules, and I think they're quite reasonable rules. We have to invest early stage. We have to invest 8/10 of our capital at least in Australian capability. So that sets a lot of that. What advantage do we bring? We have an amazing ground game. We've built a team. So I'm the Muppet fund in this business. I'm spending far more than I'm getting fees from investors by a factor of, I don't know, about 4. And I'm all happy to do that. I can see the larger opportunity here. So we've got a team of 7, including a venture partner in the US. So we have a very good ground game in Australia to find deals. Yeah, I'm somewhat lucky. I raised celebrity profile for 4 years, so that comes with inherent deal flow, to be honest, which is which a bit of an unfair advantage. Who cares? And then we also have Jacob Bostock, who's a part of our team. He's a young deal scout. His job is to go to anything. He'll go to the opening of an envelope, for Christ's sake, if there's someone involved in defence. So he'd go to rocket clubs and university campuses and defence accelerators and this and that and conferences. And his job is to get to turn over every rock and understand what everybody is doing in this sector. And then we have deal team and then process that through the various DD mechanisms at the same time. So we bring that. And then with our US ground game, substantial, we have Sean. Sean's a US venture partner. He's a former Air Force officer. He was with the DIU Defence Innovation Unit, which is the commercial equivalent of DARPA, I want to say, in the US. It's hard to strictly compare two organisations anywhere, but that's probably the best analog. It has a very good reputation. It has an amazing reputation. Andrew is Andrew because of DIU, to be quite blunt.
Wow.
So I shouldn't say that. Palmer Lucky sort of, having an ablative billionaire who'll just spend money hand over fist is also pretty useful. So DIU, he's JP Morgan, and now he's our man on the ground in the US. So our job is to then get these companies into the appropriate programs. In the US, the US political system and the US defense system or the Department of War system now is very centric around being able to influence decision makers, elected decision makers, and politicians. In Australia, if you lobby with politicians like in the US, you would be seen as corrupt, to be quite honest. It's done the open. there's no. I'm not saying that US is corrupt at all. I'm saying is that if you're an elected local politician, you have to be serving your local constituents, right? So when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, if I put my fact in your district and follow your voters, will you help me get this through the budget?" Of course, you're going to do that, right? So in some respect, it's more honest if it does feel, from an Australian concept, feel a little more grubby. The thing is about the US is, we don't share much, as it turns out. We barely share the same language. I think that bastardised our language personally, but that's always a fun discussion when you get together with a Yank. Says me, the bloke who can speak properly. So look, it's 50, there's 50 states. And as Sean will tell me, there's 50 states, 50 shades of awesome, 50 shades of crazy. There's 1,700 taxation jurisdictions in the US. Every city, county and state can do their own tax, income tax, payroll tax, fuel tax, you name it. They total rate of the tax. And Australians look at this and they think it's a bargain. And Americans look at it and it's a feature, right? Because you get a choice where to put your business based on what you do, based on how you want to conduct your business and how you want to contribute to your local community. And that's pretty powerful. So, but a lot of Australians will look at that and think that's like an independent, because it's confusing as hell. It's really confusing as hell. So a lot of Australians look at that and think it's this impenetrable armor that they've got to sort of burst through. And to me, it's a custard skin. You've just got to pull a custard skin off, right? It's pretty soft. Looks a bit unappealing, but once you get into the custard, it's pretty good. So we do these seminars called Breachpoint USA. We had one today, actually, a virtual one. And unfortunately, I was on the calls where we get US people who have walked into the US market and done the right thing and hopefully the wrong thing, so we can get those stories across and just say, this is how you do it. if you want to get into Special Operations Command, this is who, you don't go this way, you go that way. If you need to go to the Coast Guard. Coast Guard's a great purchaser, to be honest, in the US. That this is what you do. So it's all about how and things to avoid. Like there's a venture partner, Sean's got some excellent sayings. There's programs in the US that are called SBIR. So they're a bit like the old DIH programs to a degree, and some of the Australian funding programs. And they're purposely designed to go nowhere. But he calls it's like drinking seawater. It will eventually kill you. So there's things to avoid as well at the same time. So look, it's a very nuanced, it's an amazing market. In the US Department of War, there's a concept called the Other Transaction Authorities. This is an organisation who can buy off tender. So low doc actions with suppliers is the best way to think about it, I suppose. And we think there was, late last year, recently it was quoted by the head of DIU actually, that there was 275 OTAs in the US Department of War. We think it's probably still 200 after Doge. I think quite a few got dozed out. I mean, why not? Who needs 270, 275, right? I think we've found about 19 similar organisations in Australia, to give you some idea. Right? So people sort of say that, hey, is it really hard? You've got to sell to the Department of War in the US. It's a big organisation. Like, no, there's 275 different organisations. Go find the easy ones to start with. And so we're talking about Coast Guard's one. You have the Combat Applications Group, which is usually called Delta Force, but they had a bit of a war crimes issue, so they had to change the name. So they do in America, they change names. They don't bloody arrest soldiers, excuse me. But anyway, so they've got their own purchasing officers. Ring them up and they say, yeah, we need Ghost Murmur. If you've seen the Ghost Murmur story about the quantum thing that found the pilot's heartbeat, that sort of stuff. And if you can supply it, they'll buy a test unit and they'll pay full rate. They won't bargain with it. They'll pay your odds. They'll pay you to come and install it. They'll test it. By Christ, if it doesn't work, they'll talk shit about you forever and you won't ever get another chance and make sure it worked. But if they like it, more so the Special Forces will buy a shit ton because they have a lot of latitude to buy. They have a cool system there. They actually, and the Special Operations Command actually want to transition bespoke capability into regular military use, because as soon as that happens, it comes out of their budget into the army budget. So it's like a budget shift. So really, instead of this is great, but we want you the whole army to start using it, because that way the rest of the army pay for it. We get to keep more budgets. It's a very bureaucratic thing, but pretty cool.
Pretty smart idea.
Yeah.
Like, getting into the US market, you must have learnt stacks of lessons just on the journey that you've been on so far about helping Aussie defence-focused or defence tech companies enter that market. What are some of the lessons that you've learnt now that, thinking back, you wish you knew when you started Beaten Zone?
If a founder says that after you invest, I'll move to the US, don't invest until I've moved to the US.
That's a great lesson. Do you want to double click on that?
Yeah, definitely. Couple of occasions now. So we've changed our investment policy. So we will actually not invest, or we'll CP the investment, withhold the investment until what we call, a major equity incentivized senior manager. They can include a founder, may include a founder.
Yep.
Equity incentivized, an important bit, is resident in that market. So your chance of success, you can succeed without being in that market. Your chance of success is amazingly multiplied if you're resident in that market. I'm a venture capitalist. We have a portfolio for a reason. We don't know which one's going to work. We knew the one that was going to work. We put all the capital behind that one, right? So we're about doing everything to get the best probability of an outcome. The best probability of an outcome. And it's just polite common sense. It's like, of course the American supplier is going to prefer you if you live there. Don't treat every time you come there like a freaking tourist holiday, excuse me, right? So that would be, and to the point now where we are conducting an operation we call bunyip hunting. So these are to Americans, which is great. It's like talking in code. So bunyip's a mythical Australian bush creature, right?
Yeah.
Now, our theory, so we've been going, find this great business in Australia, say, hey, great, awesome, you go to the US, like, oh, I don't really want to, is anything scary? I'm actually quite, I'll say a lot worse things about these people. They don't do this because I think they're a danger to themselves. So that we have a lot of trouble convincing them to move up and attack that market appropriately. We think the way to attack it is to be resident. So our theory is that there's people over there who've already done this. They've moved over. They're sitting in co-working spaces. They started their own businesses. They're somewhere in that US defence infrastructure, and they're Australian, and we don't know about them. They're our bunyips. And they may not exist, right? But we're going bunyip hunting. There's a business over there called Hadrian. The last name, Hadrian. Also, entrepreneur out of Melbourne called Chris Power, who's actually running that. It's quite it's a near prime. So he's gone over there. He just read the tea leaves, like, man, Australia's for the birds. We can't do this. You've got to be resident in the market. Now, I'm paraphrasing him, so I'm too wrong. That's my version. I might have told it wrong, Chris. Go ahead. Sorry, mate. But he's got over there and gone, like, I'm going to stand in this market and I'm going to resist this market. I'm going to get going. That literally, like, you could be successful with that. And we have a couple of Australian examples where they are, but remember what I said, they're not successful in the US yet. They're successful in the market, which is interesting.
Yeah, in my own experience, right, growing Red on and spending so much time in the US market, the most traction we got was when we had, an incentivized senior executive based on the ground there, focused day to day on building relationships, delivering product, opening new doors. There's no question, these kind of high trust sales need, you need to build that trusting relationship, and doing it face to face and having the time to, do all the things you need to do makes sense to be on the ground. And
Materially equity incentivized senior manager.
Yeah. And which makes complete sense, right? I think about the journey you're on, and, you're raising a fund at the moment, you're investing in Australian sovereign capability in the defense ecosystem, you're helping those companies get into the US market and get traction in the US market, and ultimately hoping that they build the credibility such that they can sell back into the Australian market in some point in time. What was the logic behind targeting the US market? Obviously the size, but are they more receptive than the Australian defense market? What's the story?
In general, I get asked this question a lot. In general, in comparison to Australia, large Australian enterprises don't like buy from small Australian enterprises, especially when they're like a startup. It does happen. I know it does happen.
Yeah, of course it does.
I'm talking about an average. So in the US, they are far more predisposed, and they probably prefer buying from smaller startups. It's a cultural business phenomenon, I think, personally. So now you'll find no larger enterprise in Australia, no more bureaucratic enterprise than the Department of Defence in Australia. They are particularly bad at it. I'd say and once again, it's not because of their Department of Defence. They're a large enterprise in Australia. I think it's a cultural thing. I don't like businesses that sell to Woolworths, Coles, Wesfarmers, BHP, all those. They're bad people to sell to because it's just tough. So the US is, like we mentioned before, it was 200 up to 275 organisations who could do low doc transacting.
That's impressive.
So that's 275 customers you knock on the door of. At the moment, under the new administration with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, I got a lot of young men in a hurry. Dear God, is he in a hurry? I'm hoping it's because he's a young man and got Anthony's pants, as opposed to he's read a piece of intelligence where he's just got ashen-faced and thought, shit, we got to start sprinting. I fear it's the second, to be honest. So they're doing a lot of things. They're accelerating a lot. Up until this Iran fracas, he was conducting something called his Arsenal of Democracy tour. Yeah, he's an ex-TV presenter. He knows his showmanship. He knows he has to communicate. Yeah, he's quite an effective communicator. And I'm pretty sure it was like 7 out of 9 companies he visited didn't exist 15 years before.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, so they're really, they're going, okay, I have to get a Lockheed, going to build these stuff. I'm going to go to Raytheon because they're building. Actually, I think he did do SpaceX. I think SpaceX is about 20 years old. So it might be 6 out of 9. But, if you call it 20 or younger, probably 7 out of 9. Yeah, how good's that? The US president has, and so has the Secretary of War, got a whole bunch of executive orders out, which basically say, start buying from more agile organisations. Just give us what the hell we want. That's a lot of paraphrasing there. Yeah, the US is easier to sell to. They're more capable, but they run competitions. There was a recent competition out of Tampa, I want to say, called Drone Gauntlet. There was 25 companies. Out of that, one Australian one, I had asked me not to name them. Unfortunately, they weren't down selected in the final 11, but the prize out of that was serious goddamn contracts. And now you have 6 months to reduce 5,000 drones for this price point. So they look at down selecting. So they're quite serious. And this is business and defence. Yeah, it's business, right?
Of course it is.
Not every kid gets a prize. Not everyone's going to win. Do you know what I mean? So they are doing a lot of things to throw a lot of things at the wall. Just recently, there's a Brisbane company called Hypersonic Launch Systems. You're probably aware of them, mate. Michael Smart. And they had their DIU contract for 3 launches. Don't know what happened, but their launch, it's the first rocket launch. So I just thought it'd blow up on the pad. So that's what usually happens, and you'll celebrate the failure. You go, oh, we'll do it better next time. mean, they bought 3 launches for a reason. Probably under the impression that 2 would fail. They were building the rocket. They were building the hypersonic aircraft that went on top, called a flyer.
Yep.
So soon after takeoff, and it went past all these really good technical points, max Q, and all these sorts of other really cool technical NASA returns. They cut the data feed, and that was it. And they said, yeah, that was successful, and there was nothing else said. And I'm like, that's a long way away from fail. All right,
Yeah, wasn't quite.
I get no idea. But, because it failed, we go, oh, it failed. The left thruster didn't do this, and the wiggity jig on top fell off, or whatever it might be. We'll learn, we'll get better next time. And now it's just like, no, can't say. So there's lots of successes in this space. I thought that way. I could be totally wrong. I'm just fucking drawing too many probably wrong conclusions on this one, to be truthful.
So are there lessons for Australia in how Australia and the Australian government and Australian defence could approach adopting innovation and partnering with early stage companies?
Actually, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I'll give you a part of the disease. I was at a stage in Perth a couple of years ago at Chief of Army Symposium.
Yep.
I was on a panel with them when the head of the Special Forces, the guy moderating the panel. I'm like, we should all behave quite well, otherwise we're probably like murderers. Pull out his knife or something. And I was on stage, and Emily Hilda, who was head of ASCA at that point, she was a newly appointed head of ASCA at that point in time.
Yeah.
And there was also a lady, Colonel Lauren Sanders, who was a lawyer, who was curious. And I got asked the question, in lieu of forcing factors such as war, and so had the Chief of Army Symposium, we're doing this panel, and then next door was a showroom. There was about 50 different exhibitors who were exhibiting robots and drones and all sorts of stuff. Right? It was great. So, in lieu of forcing factors such as war, how do we innovate? I said, go next door, buy 24 and send them to Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the response I got from the lawyer lady, she was just going, we can't do that. They might not be safe. And I'm like, they're not meant to be safe. And she threw all these things up, haven't gone through the proper processes. And I'm like, this, how would they work or not? And I said, give them to a Ukrainian colonel who's just stopped the Russian army. If he doesn't want to use them, they're not safe. All right. So, and it's like, oh, no, we can't trust them. I'm like, let just stop the Russian army, right? Cold. And that's the attitude. I came from a freaking lawyer for a start. How annoying is that? And it's just like, oh, no, we can't do that. And also I heard, what was I going to say here? But I heard through another unrelated company that out there that they were warned not to actually make their gear available in Ukraine in case it got tainted, i.e. it fell in enemy hands. Now, which is a real risk when you put stuff into battle, right?
Sure.
So people in the Australian Defence Force are willing to buy uncombat tested product as opposed to risking to test it in combat. I'm like, none of that makes any sense. That is such a bullshit risk-averse approach. Yeah, I'm hoping that part's changed. That was about 18 months ago. I'm hoping that's changed.
Yeah, I'm also hoping it's changed. Having given the fact that we've both served, and I can think about some of the experiences I had in defence and some of the projects I worked on. I was lucky enough to build some projects. We definitely went and bought off-the-shelf stuff, and we were able to, I had the mandate to go and do that. I didn't have to go through defence procurement or any of that. And so there are pockets in defence that have the mandate to go and innovate and solve problems. The problem is there isn't 274 of those pockets. There are maybe 4 or 5.
Well, yeah, but most should have small budgets. They can just go down to Dick Smith and buy it. But here, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, being able to develop a piece of capability that might need 100 grand worth of work and someone sitting in a shed for 3 months.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to build the concept demonstrator for the first drone for defence in 1998, right? And I, had Boeing as a subcontractor and Defence Science and Technology, and we worked with, a couple of really smart people from some other government agencies, and literally pulled all the stuff together and tested it on a Kiowa and K95. Pretty interesting time.
Sure.
But anyway, so, when I look at the fund, Beaten Zone, and where you're at the moment, are you far enough into the journey where you've had any pivotal moments, or you've missed any kind of key deals, or there have been any fantastic founder relationships?
Yeah, look, it'd be hard to use names in a lot of these, and I'll give some examples though. So we missed one. We have a story people ask, how early will you invest? Which is a great question for early stage fund. We tell it as a parable or story, I suppose. We say, that if three missile engineers left the Raytheon Javelin factory and thought they could build a better anti-tank missile, we'd probably take that bet. If you know what I mean, and they come and say, we think we can make it longer range or whatever it might be. Well, you've got the chop, let's do it. So we had these three very capable young chaps, one from amazing tech company, one, I can't really say where they're from because everyone knows I'm talking about otherwise, but there's one from Big Prime, one from Neo Prime, or two from Prime, the one from a Neo Prime. And this idea around AI and drones and stuff, but they had like 15 ideas, all around this sort of stuff. And we're going to come back when you've got less than 15, all right? When we should have taken that bet, to be honest. Another larger VC firm in Australia, the founder ended up moving to the US, was in an elevator. I'm going to obfuscate the entire thing, otherwise I'll be breaking condoms, but was in an elevator and in a certain place in the US where another VC just happened to be in the ride, literally did the elevator pitch. Next day had a $9 million TAM.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Far out.
Bingo, right? So that was amazing. When we missed that one, to be honest. Our aim is I'm comfortable with those misses. I don't like them, but there's a far bigger problem than actually sort of getting the offer and not choosing to, being in the room the day that Canva pitched it, not making the investment, right? Because guess who that was? Yeah, my wife reminds me, it was a $174 million mistake. Oh, well, they were a pitch deck and without a business. It was literally a pitch deck. And so the people who didn't invest, are obviously far more risk tolerant than I am. Or was at that stage. I'm probably a bit more risk tolerant now, to be honest. So our aim is to be at every table. So, if we hear about a business that raised money that we should have invested in, or we should have had the choice to say yes or no, and we weren't there, that's when I pull my team in and we'll bring forward employee reviews at that point. We have to know all these businesses. It's just not negotiable.
There been any amazing founder relationships that you've built that have, really helped the fund?
Well, very much help the fund. That's interesting. So yes, and one who's recently outed himself as an investor. So I invested in 4 young chaps out at Logan one time that had a web framework business. They ended up morphing into an LMS and ended up morphing into a corporate.
I think I know those guys.
Yeah, called Go One. So Vu Tran was the chap there. And his company's been quite public. So Vu's also a GP.
Cool.
Sorry, excuse me. As in a general practitioner. He's a doctor.
Oh, great.
Not a general.
I thought the other GP.
He's an MD. He's a medical professional. He's a doctor.
Yeah, got it.
So he still practices. He's now the co-founder of Guide of Weapons.
One of my favorite companies.
Yeah. So, and he's recently pleasantly added himself. Thank you very much, Vu, with respect to being one of our investors. I've loved working with Vu, Andy, Chris, and Chris. I'm not the guy working with him also. And Vu's always been a lot of fun. He's a fisherman as well, so we have a lot to talk about. We like to talk about fishing. And he is a very well put together young man. He can communicate exceptionally well. And so he's been a real asset for everything he advocates on behalf of, to be truthful. So that's been lovely. Who else I talk about? There's a bunch of, I've got some great LPs in this business. But we could talk about pipeline portfolio of companies. So our first company is a business called HGO Space.
Mm-hmm.
The founders is Will Crow and HJ. Sorry, there's a short length name I struggled, but everyone calls him HJ. So, and they had just great. They did YC, as did Go One. Now think about it. And just very well put together, know how to operate with customers, know how to operate with investors, what you expect out of that. So Will is a very sort of, gregarious, lovely bloke. And it's a lot of fun to be around. And they take pictures of shit in space. It's a really cool business, right? So
solving a pretty cool problem, right?
Otherwise, I've had over 1,300 meetings to get my 49 investors. And it's taught me a lot about myself, about how much of a shit salesman I am, to be honest. And I've had to fix that game up. I wouldn't have had to sell it before. I shouldn't say I had to, but a lot of them were peer sales, which is a lot different to what I'm doing at the moment.
So can we dig into that, Steve? Because one of my questions is what's a challenge that you've had to overcome as a GP, as in general partner? And what have you learned and how's that influencing you today? Because I think you've got some lessons and insights, and you and I have both been on a journey over a long time, and I've watched you change and grow and, in a whole bunch of ways, and really cool to hear some of the lessons you've learned and how that influences you today.
Yeah, look, on the sale, that when you raise money, you are selling equity. You're selling a
Yeah, of course.
portion of ownership or something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
And it's a sales process. And anyone who doesn't think it's a sales process has got rocks in their head that not approach it correctly. So I started that process. I implemented a good sales process. What I think is still a good sales process using CRMs and machinery to assist. And so probably the best piece of advice I got, I was sitting at a conference in somewhere in California. It's one of those conferences I'm allowed to talk about, but it's a conference in California I can't talk about. It's sort of Bill Barty actually and just at that point in time that the Blackbird had just actually announced that they'd sold that first slice of their fund to return some equity to their investors. And Blackbird won. Some returns to their investors, which is great news. And I was talking to Bill about that. And I said, I must have been, how hard was it? They had like $23 million they raised. I want to say it was from, is it 90 investors? I can't remember how. It was a lot. And how many meetings they had. Remember, he said at that stage, I'd done 650 something meetings. He said they had like 200 and something meetings or whatever. No, so there was a 600 meeting difference between what they'd done and what I'd done. I remember thinking to myself, right, I've only got 600 meetings to go. They're sort of flippantly, but Bill gave me the advice that unless someone leans in to what you're saying straight away and start asking more and gets engaged, you just walk away, you drop. They'll never come back. You can never convince. And I'm back to recut my pipeline quite aggressively based on that advice. And that was really good advice. So let me sort of target a lot more efficient way. So,
and in the sales process, like you're selling an investment and an investment thesis and an investment return. How do you do that in a way that, like, what's the communication strategy? How do you build trust with people when you're selling, what is, a really, I guess, important, but also probably not as well understood, segment of the market or thesis?
I don't think anyone ever doubted our thesis. There was probably elements of it, to be honest. Everyone understood, everyone can see the deteriorating, we're going from unipolar world to a multipolar world, and that's probably not great. It'll be different. I don't know how good or bad it's going to be. And to get to that end, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be sort of regional issues, which we're seeing playing out in various areas at the start now. So everyone got that part. I find myself less and less explaining the tailwinds as to why defense, why now.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, so why now? So how are we actually taking advantage of those tailwinds? So when we talk about, and we have a tax efficient aspect to what we're doing, for example, we have built a lot of deal flow in this space. The fact that if you're investing in defense in Australia, there's actually really nothing but early stage, to be honest. It's very nascent. Very few late stage options that you can choose from. The field's very small, and that's bad because you have very little to compare it against. So it's very easy to get across the point of view that we have an amazing buy-side equation because we're one of the few people in this space will fund. So therefore, equity is cheap. And I tell that to founders, and that might sound derogatory, but these guys, I'm going to blow it with the goal. I'm not going to overpay. But go find 10 other investors. Great. Let them overpay. Good luck to you. You know what I mean? I've owned businesses before and sold equity in them too. So I know you want to sell less of your equity. That's not my job to buy less of your equity. My job is to buy more for a better dollar. So there's a lot in there that we can say, being able to, it's very easy to communicate that there's a larger defense market somewhere else. I do try and disentangle myself from, hey, let's go help the ADF. We've had this conversation, Wayne. I know we have.
Yep.
Let's go help the ADF. I'm like, nuts. No. With a spoon. No, thank you very much. I don't think that their current budget constraints and the way they currently think about risk, that they're not helpful and they need to go on a journey yet. Part of that's political budget. The other part is risk. So once we get across, the biggest issue I have, and one of the things that I'm glad I didn't really hate that I did, was include the word lethality in my mandate. But I think that, we are in somewhat trouble in the West because we refuse to have hard conversations and instead we use pretty euphemism. But, we're talking defense. We're talking defense of the realm. And it doesn't matter how much you dislike war. I think we all do. You can dislike it as much as you want. When it kicks in your front door, it doesn't give a shit what you think about it. So that's just the reality. Lethality is a part of that. You have to be willing and able to visit violence on the people who visit violence on you. That way, no one enters that equation. But when the beautiful people I speak to go home and have that domestic conversation, I'm going to put, $500,000 with this thing. We're going to fund missiles and shit that blows people up. The wives are like, no, you're not. I get that. That's fine. So, but at the same time, I didn't want to lie. I didn't want any surprises. What we do is on the tip. Our name of the business is Beaten Zone Venture Partners. The Beaten Zone is the part of the battle for all the bullets land. That there are more lethal places you can stand, but not very bloody many. We're not going to hide behind the people that we invest in. We're going to stand beside them. If they're taking sort of a community and social slings and arrows for what they do, then we'll stand right beside them and be beside them, not behind them. So it's quite deliberate. I don't think it's made my task easier. However, it's defense. None of it's meant to be easy. That's why they train soldiers hard.
If you're an LP or someone in the market at the moment that genuinely does care about democracy and freedom, and you understand defense is necessary and you want to invest into a defense focused fund, how do people get in contact with you?
Yeah, cool. So beatenzone.vc. If you search for Steve Baxter, Beaten Zone, you'll find us. There's only one of us around.
Yep.
There's a form there, and obviously we're governed under ASIC and AFSL and all the rest of it. There's so much information I can provide. But go to our webpage for investors, register here. That will ultimately come to me. Because we get a little bit of spam comes in. So once general inquiries come to me, I'm more happy to sit down, have a chat. I'll walk you through the proposal. Or I understand that, are you a sophisticated? Do you make the 708 rules under ASIC? So are you capable of receiving this offer from us? We need a check in the front. And the other one we do is we want to make sure that you're not aggressor capital. So you're not opposition capital, that you're not, you're not somehow a Russian citizen or an Iranian citizen or something along those, North Korean or whatever it might be. So that's true.
Yeah. Part
of our mandate around sovereignty under our tax formation, under the ESVCP rules, we have to invest 50% of. So sovereignty in that case means a company that has 50% of its staff or 50% of its assets in Australia, which I think is a good definition.
Yep.
We layer an extra layer on top of that for ourselves, and we say that nothing in that company can have anything that makes it impossible for us to do business, us or our other portfolios to do business in the US. So you can't have Russian scientists, Chinese shareholders, have shitty contracts with meetings, talk to jurisdictions, for example. Apparently they're our friends. they got petrol, so we like them again all of a sudden. Terrible. Anything that would prevent you accessing, and the rest of us, our portfolio, accessing the biggest market world in the US. So we put that up. Well,
mate, you've got some great advisors around you with really deep domain expertise and huge amounts of credibility. How are they helping to direct your focus and or position the fund?
Yeah, it's good actually. So, we do have some great advisors. Yeah, I can't thank them enough. Everything we have people in a technical sense who are at least leaders in this country, if not in the allied world, for what they do.
Yeah.
We have, aeronautical engineers who are amazing. We have avionics engineers that just blow my mind. We have special forces guys who've done the real work, if you know what I mean. So we have people who just build and operate factories, because defence is light industrial manufacture for the most part. We have people to build factories. So we have a bunch of advisors there. Our most recent one is a lady, Charlie McGillis. She's ex-US Space Command or Space Force. I keep the other two confused. Ex-US Air Force, 35 years. She's great. Charlie, she's a gun. Absolute weapon. Space warfare type person, which I didn't even exist until I met Charlie, right? Like Buck Rogers or something. Or maybe Starbuck from the new version of Battlestar. So and we have locally, the name you might know is a chap, former Major General Mick Ryan. He's great. He helps us out in various levels. We have some great advisors that assist us. We're looking for some more. We're happy to bring in another Australian star officer that has a lot of experience in the US, a flag officer has experience in the US. That'd be nice. And then otherwise we're looking for US, because we need to get our business successful in the US. I don't really want very many Australian generals, to be honest. I'm selling to the Australian Defence Force. They aren't that valuable to be truthful.
Yeah, look, I think, having really high profile, credible advisors around you just demonstrates the quality of the fund and the thematic, and people like that, they back people they trust, right? So that's a pretty cool, I guess, endorsement for what you're trying to focus on and the impact that you're having. Steve, the next 6 to 12 months, you've got a lot going on at Beaten Zone. What are some of the key things that you're looking forward to?
6 to 12 months, every one of our company's exits for 100x. In all seriousness, so we have to do final close by mid-August under tax rules.
Yep.
So we'll get that sort of tie up and a bow done. So that we have two of our businesses right now one's raising an A round, one raising a B round, substantial uplift. That's great. Once they get to the end of that process, as you all know, these can fall over right at the end. So we'll wait till they get there. We are currently at 6 portfolio companies. I'd like to be at 10, so we are behind. One of the problems we're facing with Australian businesses is, I mentioned my frustration before with founders like moving to the US. So we are seeing a lot of, it feels like 2010, 11 again in Brisbane, where the founders of these businesses just had this stupid small business approach to things. Not investor ready would be the polite description for it. Yeah, it's a lot of really dumb shit, to be honest. None of it's failed to the business, don't get me wrong, but it makes them uninvestable. So I really want a very bloody brave investor. And you know what brave investors, because brave investors aren't clever. Excuse me, you want smart money. Smart money doesn't go near bad corporate formation, for example, right? So there's a lot to play for. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. The government has released a tender of something called the REOI for the Advanced Capability Investment Fund, which is a $500 to $1 billion, depending how you count money. So it's a $1 billion match dollar for dollar from government. So $1 from government, $1 from private sector for up to $1 billion to invest in, defense capability. Yep. So we're responding to that. That's due next week. It's due in like 6 days. How good's that? I'll do my best homework. Not quite done. You do my best homework the night before. So we'll see. So we're looking forward to responding to that. Hopefully that will provide more capital into the defence space in Australia, which would be good. I am worried it'll be like, there's $1 billion worth of, there's $500 million worth of potential government capital, which is like, what probably was 20% of 500. So there's $100 million over 10 years of fees, right? 20% you pay in fees. So yeah, just $20 million, $100 million, of fees over 10 years. Right? You'll see no end of people come out of the woodwork who, yesterday they were investing in Instagram and tomorrow they think that they're the world's best satellite investor. And you'll see a lot of that sort of carry on, which will be fun to watch, to be honest. But the Australian defence sector's got a long way to go. The entrepreneurs will have to pick up their game. The investor community has to pick up its game. So we have, if you meet with a US venture firm, you meet with a guy who whilst he was at Yale doing his business MBA, he was doing it on his sabbatical from SEAL Team 6 or fucking F-18 squadron or something like that, if you know what I mean. They are truly well put together, hard as combat tested, tested under pressure individuals. And then they're the general partners and investors at these firms. And in Australia, we have, now no real offence here, but it's a joke, so let's hope people can take jokes. We have a bunch of private school rugby lads. They're bankers in Australia, right? Just what it is. And
different market, mate.
10-13's a private school rugby lads. That's our joke we have between each other. Yeah. But it is like over there, you've got the guy, and you have decorated veterans who have been at the sharp edge. I met one that was a B2 pilot. This was about 18 months ago, before B2s got really famous. There's a B2 bomber pilot, for Christ's sake. Whilst, he's got his Yale or Harvard MBA or something, some sort of businessy thing, economics, who cares what it is? It's, demonstration that he's a pretty cookie, right?
I was talking to a founder yesterday in California, ex-SEAL team, just absolutely switched on, super smart, super capable, completely dialed in. And you're just looking at this guy going, I was genuinely impressed. Yeah.
We don't have that level of expertise in Australia. I think the framework around it's good. I think me as a libertarian would prefer they didn't actually risk cash. I prefer that. Well, I just prefer these tax incentives get the same outcome. So there's plenty of well understood tax programs out there. There's ESIC, here's VCLP. Instead of 10 and 20% tax breaks, for example, make it 50, 100% tax breaks. If it is the worst strategic time I've ever seen since World War II, and it is urgent, you can say it's urgent, but what you do indicates it's not urgent. So, you want to drive private capital in, investors follow incentives. Yeah, you don't have to risk public money.
Okay. Sounds like a very good alternative bid there, Steve.
Yeah, well, you're foregoing future tax. But because the tax situation in Australia is that bad, no one would ever invested to make that tax return and to make that income in the first place to be taxed. So you're foregoing tax that you would otherwise never have gotten, but you built an industry. And this is how you've got to change people's mindset around this sort of stuff, to be quite honest. So
That's why it needs people like you involved in the formation of those kind of programs, right? Hey, let's bring this plane down. You've shared a stack of really valuable content about Beaten Zone. You've shared a stack of really valuable, I guess, experience and ideas around the ecosystem here, the maturity of the ecosystem here, the opportunity in North America, why investors would invest. So a lot going on, and it's exciting to see the progress you're making. I'm certainly keen to see the impact you're going to have.
I'll send you an application form, mate. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Sounds good. I have one defense-focused investment at the moment, and Praetorian Aerospace.
Oh, yeah, no, Praetorian. You didn't mention that before. Sorry.
Yeah. Really impressed with them, right? Great guys, and doing some really cool stuff and testing their stuff in the Ukraine. So, yeah. Let's shift gears and go to 7 rapid-fire questions. You ready?
Yeah, I hope so.
Coffee or tea, mate?
Coffee.
Next question. Are you a morning person or a night person?
Mornings. I don't really sleep.
Yeah. Do you prefer beaches or mountains?
No beaches, mountains. I've got a bad. I'm an old soldier. Every old soldier's got bad knees. Fuck me. Why prefer beaches?
Damn straight, right? You into books or podcasts?
Oh, audio books and podcasts.
Yeah, I get it.
My answer.
And do you prefer working from the office or home?
Office.
Yeah. Why?
I get to drive. Crazy as it sounds, my office is 55 minutes north of where I live. So I can do an hour and a half to 2 hours in the car a day for a commute.
Yep.
And so talk about the podcast. So I do consume a lot of content, probably half geopolitical and half military tech.
Yep.
And in the car, you have no choice but to listen to content. At your desk at work, you can't do that.
No.
So to me, it's a very, very valuable use of time. And a bit of downtime, you'd think. And we didn't think you'd get to listen, I suppose. So that's why I do like the drive.
Yeah, really cool. Is there a particular defense tech-focused podcast that you are really rating at the moment?
Defense tech. So there's several content creators out there I really like.
Yep.
I mentioned these one of my emails out to potential LPs about a month ago. And Mick Ryan is prolific. Jesus, you cannot keep it what he writes. Jesus Christ, I don't have his time. But they've all really good stuff. But it's like, another one out. Mick's good. There's a chap out of the UK. He's in a venture firm called Frontier Ventures. Sam Burrell. He has something called This Week in Dual Use. It's a weekly one. It's a nice, easy to consume email update.
Yeah, cool.
There's some UK commentators. There's a guy called Michael Clark. He's a typical video podcast on, I think it's Sky News UK. And he's a professor of something at King's College of War or stuff, but he's very good commentary. Absolute mad Trump derangement syndrome, but if you can get past that, pretty good. Another guy there's Sean Belch. I think he's an ex-Harrier pilot, Air Force Harrier pilot, I think. And he has really good tactical, just ground level advice and that sort of stuff. He's also got pretty bad fucking TDS too. Excuse me. So they are good. The other guy, there's a guy called Ben Hodges, who's a former head of US Army in Europe. He's retired. Ben has really, he's got TDS. They've got TDS. Maybe Trump's the problem, not these people. This Ben is quite good. In the economic sense, especially what's going on in the Gulf at the moment, there's a fantastic podcast called Bloomberg, but D for Doom. Their symbols are green chicken. They're essentially hydrocarbon economists. So they look at a molecule, and they'll give you something. They predicted Venezuela soon after Trump was elected. And they said, okay, if he's going to do this, then he's going to take out Venezuela or something. They thought he'd do it differently. They didn't think he was going to go in and pinch Bureau. But so looking at things through economics, and especially through oil economics and hydrocarbon, because oil doesn't mean shit nowadays. It's gas. There's a ton of molecules out there that power the world. Doomberg is, if you read and you can listen to it as well, Doomberg, then you will not be a fan of an energy transition. That not by any stretch. It is absolute bullshit fallacy what we're putting ourselves through, and it's just in stark numbers. They talk about the amount of energy that's used to create industrial steam, for example, which you just cannot do anywhere near as efficiently with electricity. As an example, you've got to use things that burn and create flame. Level of steam, even nukes aren't that good for it because they burn cooler, but they run cooler, I should say, than what you need. But they dig in a lot of topics, and they have a lot of great logical frameworks for how to actually deduce things that are happening, and it's really worth it. That's enough. There's more, but we'll probably run out of time.
That's really cool. Mate, do you fit time in your schedule for gym or cardio?
I used to ride the bike on the road, and my job is to travel the world and have lunch and dinner with interesting rich people. And I swear that, probably 40% in the last 2 years have been almost killed in a push bike accident, a road cycling accident. And that made me stop. So now when if I use the bike now, I've got a trainer at home, so I'll do it inside in the trainer. So I'll just go into my gym room, I'll put the air conditioner on 34 degrees Celsius and get on that path. I'd do a sauna and a cycle at the same time. But I broke my knee fishing about 18 months ago. No, August last year, was it? Yeah, sometime. I can't remember. It was last year. I'm pretty sure it was last year. And it hasn't quite healed. And so I'm just struggling with most things. I've got lots of excuses for non-exercise. They're all shit excuses. They actually make sense to me, my shit excuse.
Sounds like a learning opportunity, Matt.
I should do more.
Yeah. Last question, Steve. Who's a founder or investor you'd love to hear from on 7 Questions?
Oh, you think of the one? Oh, that's a good question. I've done that or investor. There's a ton. I know. We had the opportunity to meet Palmer Luckey in LA about October, not last October, probably October 18 months ago, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it was a great meeting. You know, when the EA come in the half-hour mark and over the door, are you going to leave? And like, oh, okay. He's enjoying the meeting, right? Which is actually pretty cool. So he was fascinating. So we do a podcast series through Meet and Zone. Peter Ellis does it called The Briefing Room.
Okay.
She's had some great people on there. To be honest, like James Palmer from Selenium Defence down at Adelaide. He was great. The Rob guy interview was just fantastic. What Rob's done with Naya, Australian Prime is just when you consider he took that business through the hellscape that was post Port Arthur firearms wholesale space. That was great. That interview.
Hey, Steve, thanks so much for joining us on 7 Questions. Thanks for sharing your story and also the story of Beaten Zone Venture Partners. It's great to see what you're doing, and I'm super excited for the portfolio companies and for the investors out there that are looking to invest in defense tech. Pick up the phone or jump online, jump on Steve's website at Beaten Zone Venture Partners and fill in the form.
Beatenzone.vc.
We'll put all the contact details in the show notes. Thanks so much, Steve. Thanks for listening to this episode of 7 Questions. If you'd like to learn more about the founders, you can get a link to the full show notes in the description below. Have a great day. We look forward to you joining us on the next episode.